In this presentation, we will be discussing all of the transportation elements on Main Street in downtown Muscuda. My name is Joanne Martin with CBB Transportation Engineers and Planners. First, we will talk about the driver experience. What does the roadway look like? How do people access downtown Muscuda? What are the volumes? How many crashes have occurred in the study area? Then we will talk through the biking and walking experience. What is the existing trail network? How is the pavement condition? Who owns which roads in the city? Next, we will talk about signage and wayfinding. How do people know they have arrived in downtown Muscuda? We will talk through public transportation in the area and available parking. Lastly, we will discuss access management. First, we will talk about the driver experience. Main Street is a two-lane roadway. As shown in the picture on the right, the shoulder widths vary from 0 feet to 10 feet for on-street parking. Throughout the project limits, there's parking sometimes on one side, sometimes on both sides, and sometimes not at all. The speed limit is 30 miles an hour, and we see most people obeying that. Speeding is not a known issue in this area. As far as traffic control goes, there is one signal in the study area at the intersection with 6th Street. And there's one all-way stop control at the intersection with Route 4, and all the other cross streets are side street stop controlled. Accessing downtown Muscuda is pretty easy, especially for those that live in town. There's a lot of streets that intersect with Main Street that provides great access for all the locals to get to downtown Muscuda. Some of the bigger ones being 6th Street, Railway Street, and Market Street. For those that are coming from out of town, most people are going to come in from Route 4. Some will also use Route 158 to get to downtown Muscuda. Traffic volumes are low in Muscuda. The roads in the area don't see more than 7,000 vehicles per day on average on them. For reference, in the city of St. Louis, some of the major thoroughfares there, not interstates, but they can reach up to 30,000 vehicles per day or more. So the two-lane roads here in Muscuda are plenty to carry these low volumes through the city, so congestion isn't really an issue. And on Main Street, the truck traffic is 2%, and all of this information comes from IDOT's Traffic Count GIS mapping site. The number of crashes on Main Street are low. We were able to obtain the most recent available crash data, which is from 2010 to 2017, and saw that there were 86 total crashes on Main Street within our project limits. That comes to an average of 10.8 crashes per year. You can see in the figure on the right that there was a spike in crashes in 2015, but other than that one spike, the number of crashes have remained pretty steady over those 8 years, and most of them have been property damage only. Federal Highway breaks down the types of crashes into level of injury. So A is the least injury, it's not visible at the scene. B is medium, you can see some injuries, but they're not disabling. And C would be a disabling injury. And there were 6 disabling injuries over those 8 years and no fatal crashes. So the crash severity is low within our project study area. This graphic shows the breakdown into types of crashes. You can see it's pretty evenly distributed between rear ends, parked motor vehicles, angles, and fixed objects. And turning is a pretty big chunk as well. None of these are really major severity type crashes like a T-bone would be. So this is consistent with the data that we've seen previously. It also tells us there's not one main issue that's contributing to the types of crashes within the study area. As far as locations of crashes, we did see the highest number at the intersection of Route 4. 12 out of the 86 occurred at that intersection. And this is pretty expected since this intersection has the heaviest traffic volume.
Hi, my name's Jackie Knight, and I'm going to be discussing multimodal transportation elements in the Muscuda Main Street corridor. When we think about transportation, we want to think about all users, including people walking and biking. St. Clair County has a great trail system already established in their Metro bike lane system. Muscuda is located in close proximity to this system. So thinking ahead, it is important to understand how we might be able to connect Muscuda to this system. This is another look at the project area in relation to the Metro bike lane system. There are some major connection challenges to overcome, like interstates, but there are ways to continue this trail system into Muscuda and Main Street, and it is something to think about as we look to the future. For people walking and biking in Muscuda, there is already the beginnings of a great trail system. The existing shared use path on Hog River, north of Chevy Park, is a nice facility that connects through a residential community. The grid system creates the opportunity for future walking and biking paths through town connecting to Main Street, as pictured here. Additionally, the L&N Railroad right-of-way is an opportunity for a future shared use path segment to complete the loop on the southern side of town. So, how can we get people walking and biking to Main Street? We know Main Street is constrained for space from all the competing uses like parking, driving, and walking. But both Church and State Street offer plenty of space to better connect people to Main Street. With low motor vehicle volumes and 40 feet of space from curb to curb, there is an opportunity to connect people on foot and bikes to Main Street from Church and State Street. Additionally, the small amount of stop signs traveling east and west on these routes make an appealing route for bicyclists that do not want to stop regularly at four-way stops. Continuing to look at walking, we know there is room for improvement in the pedestrian conditions on Main Street. Much of the pavement is in poor condition and many crossings are not ADA compliant. However, the Illinois Department of Transportation, IDOT, has a Main Street resurfacing project planned in which these sidewalks will be updated. There are 8 marked crosswalks on Main Street. Currently, they appear as shown. One way to update these is to add enhanced crosswalks that are continental style, which are more visible to both motorists and pedestrians. As discussed previously, one unique item about the project area is the ability to connect people on foot to Main Street from access off of Church and State Streets. This can be done through enhanced pedestrian treatments on side streets or even some creative pedestrian and placemaking efforts through these alleyways that connect to parking lots off the back of Main Street. In terms of connecting to Main Street and what side streets we might be able to make major bike and pedestrian improvements, we want to look at who owns the road. The map here shows which routes are state, IDOT owned, and which routes are city owned. It is best to choose city-owned roads as new pedestrian and bike routes in your community to have the most input on the final project. In addition to looking at transportation modes, it is important to understand what wayfinding and signage currently exist. This is important in terms of people accessing Main Street as well as for people to know when they have reached Main Street. Currently, the signage is oriented toward motor vehicles with minimal pedestrian scale signage. As pictured here, you can see the state route marking that is visible throughout the corridor, as well as the Main Street signage on the east side of the corridor. There are a lot of opportunities for enhanced wayfinding and signage branding on the corridor. Another mode of transportation to consider is public transit. Currently, public transportation plays a small role in the Muscuda community. There is one bus line that runs with long headways, wait times, both west and north of the project area. There is a planned Metrolink expansion to the Mid-America Airport, which will enhance transit access to the community in the future years. The public transportation is a joint operation of Metro and St. Clair County Transit District. Another key component to consider with transportation is parking. In order for businesses to thrive, we want to ensure plenty of parking, but we don't want an abundance of parking that is taking up valuable real estate space. Some initial estimates based on aerial imagery indicate there is plenty of parking within the project area when looking at on-street parking on Church, Main, and State, as well as parking lots. On lots north of Main, we estimate 479 parking spots, and on Church Street from 6th to Jefferson, we estimate 165 on-street parking spots. Based on aerial imagery, we estimate on lots south of Main 296 parking spots, and on State Street from 6th to Jefferson, we estimate 125 on-street parking spots. And finally, On Main Street, we estimate there to be 95 on-street parking spots. Another final thing that we want to look at is access management.
When we talk about access management, we're talking about how the road system is set up to provide access to all the various land uses throughout the area. Sometimes that's through direct driveways right off the roadway. Sometimes it's through cross streets. We've got shared driveway access that reduces the number of curb cuts. Obviously, businesses want direct access to their uses, but when you add a ton of driveways off the main road, it becomes unsafe for pedestrians and motorists to try and navigate. It creates a lot more conflict areas on the roadway. So we try to limit the number of driveways right off the main road, especially close to intersections. But as far as Main Street and downtown Muscuda goes, access management is great because there are so many cross streets that can provide access to the businesses in the area without needing a driveway right off of Main Street. So access management is good, and it really does not impact the safety or operations, in downtown Muscuda. There are a few driveways in the study area which could use some maintenance work. They are very wide and not clearly defined, and this can cause conflict points for pedestrians and motorists trying to figure out where their dedicated space is. It's confusing, so it's better to have defined curb cuts, a smaller width to make that pedestrian crossing distance shorter, and a very clearly defined path for the vehicles using that entrance. I will say that these curbs may be improved through the IDOT resurfacing project that's coming through in 2022 that we've already discussed previously.